Buonasera a tutti, benvenuto alla Vita, è uno dei più grandi scrittori europei e non lo dico per amicizia, insomma, ci conosciamo da tanti anni e ho fatto tante interviste perché credo sinceramente che lui in questi anni ci abbia dato il suo corpo di scrittore, di sceneggiatore, di autore che lavora su mezzi diversi, una riflessione sulla contemporaneità, sulle relazioni di genere, di sesso, di classe, di rara altezza, di rara capacità di descrivere le società in cui viviamo. Il titolo dell'incontro di questa sera parte dalla prima riga di questo libro, Cosa è successo, e scrivere è la mia vita. Io tenterò di fare un paio di domande sulla scrittura, che è la cosa più difficile in assoluto per un intervistatore, ma credo anche per un intervistato. E intervistare Daniel Qureshi non è sempre facile perché lui, come scrive in questo passaggio, è uno scrittore che ama stare a casa a scrivere e fa una certa fatica a incontrare il suo pubblico, ve lo dico. Adesso invece i festival spuntano come funghi e alcune attirano folle enormi, il che è ottimo per la letteratura, ma un po' destabilizzante per scribacchini che passano gran parte della propria vita nell'ombra e che spesso hanno scelto questa vita perché faticano a parlare con le altre persone. Figuriamoci davanti a una letteratura. E quindi vorrei tentare di farvi due domande iniziali sulla scrittura, per parlare di vari temi che affronta in questa raccolta, che è una raccolta di riflessioni, di prefazioni a sì e no, ci sono delle pagine bellissime, di ricordi personali, c'è un capitolo su David Bowie fantastico, e di riflessioni sul terrorismo, sulla società contemporanea, di racconti, insomma è un libro con una struttura molto duttile e versatile, secondo me molto ricca e di enorme potenza. E sono le seguenti: a un certo punto Anif tu scrivi che a tuo avviso il romanzo è una forma in declino, però per fortuna oggi la narrazione passa anche altrove. Ci puoi dire qualcosa di più su questo?
I'd just like to say, the first thing you said was that writing was difficult, or I said that. I was surprised that I said that, because writing, it has to be difficult, I think. I think if you just sat down and you just read something and it was brilliant, then you read something else that was brilliant, I think that will be great. I think there has to be a real tension between you and what you think you might want to say and the effort to say it. So writing has to be difficult, but it can't be too difficult so that it's impossible. But I think that to write, you're always struggling with frustration. That you never, I'm sure, you are a writer and a journalist yourself. The struggle is important. You want it to be easy. You want to sit down and just tell your story, and that would be glorious that you just write it. But if it wasn't difficult, it wouldn't be interesting. And it has to be frustrating, and you have to live with the frustration. And I think that's the struggle of being a writer, and that's one of the, you have to learn to enjoy it being difficult, I think. As I say, it can't be so difficult it would be impossible. Some people never manage to write anything, they suffer, they sweat, they bleed from the ears and so on. But I think there has to be a real tension between what you think you might want to say and what you actually find out saying. So I think the writing, when you start and you sit down, you don't know what you're going to say. You have some vague idea that you have this character, the story, the scenario, and then you have to find it. So I think there's the difficulty of not knowing what the hell you're doing, or where you are, or where you're going. And I think that's one of the pleasures of writing, and one of the things that makes it such a pain in the ass. which is that there's no destination. If I'm writing a description of a football match, it's quite clear what I would say and what the match was and my description of it. But if I'm writing a fiction, or if I'm writing the most beautiful form of all the essay, I don't know what I want to say, but I know that I want to say something and I have to try and find it. So I think that's what I meant when I said that I thought it had to be difficult. So every day when I go to my desk and I sit down and I find it difficult, I have to explain to myself what I've just said, that the difficulty is part of the pleasure of it. And if it wasn't difficult, it probably wouldn't be worth doing. The other thing is that there are some people in the world who are very, very fluent at doing things. They can just do things really easily. I remember hearing stories about Paul McCartney. He wrote a wonderful song called Hello, Goodbye, Goodbye. And somebody came up to him and said, could you write a simple song saying hello, goodbye? And he sat down and he took these two simple words and he wrote the song and showed the journalist that he could write a song. And you think, very my whole life could be like that. But of course, Paul McCartney hasn't been able to do that since that day either. So your talent, it comes and goes. You know, and sometimes you write something that's really good and you work on something else with the same amount of effort and it's really bad. So this is the life of a writer, and as we say in English, it's a bit up and it's a bit down. But then you asked me another question.
No, on the novel, on novels, if there are a form of art which is declining.
Well, when I was a child, and I was very interested in American writing, the American writing in the post-war period, from Updike, Cheever, Baldwin, that generation, particularly Philip Roth, that was an incredible generation of writers. And when any of those writers wrote a book, you went and read it. And you went and read it because you wanted to know what was going on in the culture, because these artists are central. It doesn't matter that the novel now isn't central. People still write novels and they write good novels and people still read them. What is really central to the culture now, I guess, is probably, or has been at least, television. And there's been some very, very good television in the last probably 25 years. And the culture moves around. Poetry is not central, but there are some very good poets and some poets that are really worth reading. So I don't think it matters that the novel isn't central. I still read novels, and if there's a good novel around, I'll read it and enjoy it. And there's something about a novel that is freer than in every other form. If I write a movie, I've been writing a movie recently, if I write a movie, then I go to the producer. Then the producer says to me, I think you should change the end. Then I rewrite the end. Then the producer says, I think we need a bigger part for this actor. So then I write a bigger part. So when you write movies, you're always working with other people. What's beautiful about the novel is it's entirely you. When I wrote my novel, The River of Suburbia, there was nobody else, there was no other influence. Everything in that book was me, how I wanted it to be. So the beautiful thing about cinema is and television is that you work with other people. And the terrible thing about television and the cinema is that you work with other people. It's a great pleasure to collaborate, but also your collaboration involves you in compromises, I guess.
Ci sono un paio di passaggi a proposito della prima risposta che ha dato la NIF che vi leggo. È un capitolo che si chiama Il diavolo dentro, che fa i conti con quello che Freud chiamava il superiore. E ve lo leggo perché sono significativi e molto coerenti con quello che ci ha appena risposto. Manca la coscienza implica premura se non creanza, sta parlando del processo dello scrivere. Manca la dimensione diabolica, forse sadica, che ha l'idea del superiore, in cui il cosiddetto bene diventa un ostacolo all'esplorazione. Quindi non è che la scrittrice abbia commesso un crimine nell'esprimersi, ma piuttosto è che in ogni caso è già colpevole di qualcosa e lo sarà sempre. L'arte emerge da quella che Nietzsche chiamava anarchia interiore, mai dal cosiddetto decoro. E questa anarchia è uno strumento formidabile, un metodo per generare pensieri che non sapevi di avere. Se è più originale, di quello che avevi mai immaginato. In realtà lui la prima risposta ci aveva detto esattamente questo. Your first answer just met.
Oh, no, I don't know, she didn't answer that.
Anyway,
Because it was really Dante's Inferno as far as I'm concerned.
c'è another question that c'è un capitolo che mi ha colpito molto da italiano, da romano, perché Anif descrive una serata a Trastevere. E il capitolo ha questo titolo: Dove sono finiti tutti quanti? È una bella serata romana, Anif passeggia per Trastevere e si siede in un ristorante. E dopo un po' si rende conto che sono tutti bianchi. Anche in questa sala siamo tutti bianchi. L'unico non bianco è un fioraio bengalese che vende dei fiori. E a quel punto scatta un processo che vi descrive in questo capitolo molto severo con noi italiani, perché in pratica ci sta dicendo: ma voi, primo appunto, dove sono finiti tutti? Dov'è il mondo? Dov'è la società? Dov'è la diversità? E qui aggiungo anche una considerazione molto italiana, molto politica, insomma cerco di farla nella maniera più neutrale possibile. In Italia, Anif lo sa benissimo, appena vinto le elezioni di centrodestra, ha vinto un partito che non ha, diciamo, una tradizione che non è xenofila, insomma non ha dentro in questioni politiche, e però per Anif il tema della diversità delle società è centrale in tutta la società. A dire: voi qui, anche a Napoli, la città di tutti, a Roma, siete in realtà più poveri di noi.
The passage that you just described comes from a sensation I had, because I grew up in a very white world. My father was an immigrant from India. He came from Bombay. He came to the UK to study law, and he was a British citizen because he was born, my dad, in the Empire. And I grew up in a very white world, in the suburbs, apart from my own family, and my own family from Pakistan, who I would see mostly every summer when they would come to London. And I wanted to get away to meet other people, so I went to London. And London for me was the first time that I met other people from other backgrounds. And so I started to work in the theatre, and I met people from Asia, from the Caribbean, from Africa, and so on. And I began to feel less odd, I guess. And I grew up in a part of South London that was very racist. And there were a lot of racist gangs. There was a group called the National Front, and another group called the BNP, which was a lot of violence. So I became aware that Britain was changing. And that Britain began in the 90s, it was quite late, through the 80s and the 90s, began to think of itself as something called multicultural. And that was very important because Britain began to see itself as a country that had an empire. And that, in a sense, that empire would carry on existing within the UK. And that the UK would be composed of Welsh people, people from Northern Ireland, Scottish people, people from Africa, blah, blah, blah. And so we began to see ourselves as something called multicultural. And the last time we met, Zadie Smith and I, and we discussed this. And I remember Zadie Smith saying, well, I come from a multicultural family, she said, so I want to see a multicultural world. And in a sense, we are a multicultural world, in the sense that even though we may be white, there are people from Scotland, Wales, who have their own identities. So I thought that recognition was really important, that in a sense we were more diverse than we were aware. And that diversity showed that we could, although we were different to each other, although we were diverse, we could still like each other. And we could admit our differences and still enjoy each other. And then one day, sitting in this cafe, I suddenly saw that the only people of colour was this man selling the roses. I suddenly felt great sympathy for him, and I thought, that could be me. And what would it be like to be him, to be so alienated, to have to beg people? And I suddenly felt a sense of alienation that I didn't normally feel, and that quite shocked me. So I thought I would write a story that you read, which is about somebody suddenly thinking, I'm not like these people, I'm like them and I'm not like them, and where is everybody else? Why is the world is so globalized now, where is everybody else? And of course, if you're in Paris or if you're in Berlin or London or Liverpool, you see many people of different races, and most of the time you get along without killing each other. And that seems to me to be very important, that different cultures, religions and races can exist side by side. And so I just thought I would describe that sense of alienation. It's certainly not for me to say whether it's should or shouldn't be multicultural. It's your country and you can do what you like. But it seems as time passes odder and stranger that a culture would be monocultural or would want to be monocultural, because the possibilities of human pleasure we take in each other are limitless. And there's no reason that there should be a limit to our ability to like other people, to get along with them, or even to tolerate them, I guess. I don't like the word tolerance. It means I tolerate my neighbours, even though I want to kill them sometimes, but I tolerate them. But I'm much more interested in people liking one another and enjoying one another. And the danger, I guess, of the extreme right, the danger of fascism is that it's organized around hatred. That it's organized around the hatred of a group that is alienated. And that's the horror of what is known as fascism. It's not just, as it were, another political system. It's based around terror, fear, and paranoia of the other, and that really worries me. Because as a child in our family, we were alienated once, and people abused us, and I would like to see that again in Europe.
Vorrei farvi un'altra su questo punto, sullo stato di salute del multiculturalismo. Perché dico questo? Perché Hanif ha conosciuto la Londra più vibrante, e qui ci sono molte pagine in cui racconta cosa ha significato lavorare e passare il tempo con Gary Paoli, con alcune delle figure più innovative e rivoluzionarie in tutti i campi della produzione artistica, dalla scrittura alla musica. Quella Londra era, dicevo, Vita, bellissima, vivevamo in contesti appunto multiculturali. Però poi è successo qualcosa, c'è stato il Brexit, lui stesso nelle interviste, naturalmente la riprende su Repubblica, dava dei giudizi dubbi nei confronti di quello che è accaduto in Gran Bretagna, così come negli Stati Uniti il dibattito è molto su questo, cioè riusciamo a tenere assieme una società in cui le culture, le razze, se vogliamo usare questo termine, ma sono proprio felice, tirano ognuna dalla sua parte, in cui è difficile tenere insieme la coesione. E forse il titolo di questo libro, Cosa è successo? What's happened? Deriva proprio da questo, da una società che fa fatica a riconoscere ormai.
One of the things that's happened in London, I think that you're referring to, is a sense of exhaustion. I guess, cultural exhaustion, but also the sense of people, certainly in London, people being driven out of the city. Because of the city is more or less inhabited now by the super rich. I have 3 sons, and my 3 kids have grown up more or less entirely. One of my sons said to me the other day, I've never known anything apart from conservatism, or neoliberalism, or this form of extreme capitalism. And he and most of his friends and contemporaries are finding it really hard to live in London now, because London has become a playground for the super rich who are buying the properties as assets. So I don't know what culture is now. It's certainly not in London anymore, which has become a much duller, much quieter place, because the interesting people can't live there anymore. They've been driven out. If you want to keep a culture alive, theatre, cinema, literature, poetry, you really have to feed it. You have to give it space. There have to be theatres, there have to be places where you can dance, there has to be a cinema. And now we're living in a time of, let's say, fiscal frugality. It's very difficult for young artists to get started, young people to find a place to live. So I think I am optimistic. I mean, you have just elected a new government here. Well, we are about, I think, next year or the year after to get rid of our government. And I have to say, it's a mercy. We've had this Conservative government for 12 years, and the country is really exhausted, and the Conservative government has more or less blown up the economy. In the last few days, they blew up the economy. It was wonderful and very entertaining, at least for me, to see. So I think we're going to have I think there will be some kind of change in the next 2 years. You have a different kind of change here. Good luck with that. But finally, it does show that it is possible. And I think in Britain now there's a real sense of rebellion among people. I think people are really genuinely fed up with this kind of extreme capitalism that has moved money from the poor to the rich, and the rich have got richer, and ordinary people now can't pay their energy bills. I'm sure you have the same problems here in Italy with high inflation, high interest rates, blah, blah, blah. And I think we've come to the end of that cycle in the UK. So, surprisingly, I'm rather optimistic, and I think there will be some kind of resurgence. But it's been a long time coming, actually. But I think now in the UK, people are really fed up with this kind of government, and I think there will be a change in the next year or 2 years.
C'è un capitolo il cui titolo è Sentirete la nostra voce. Scrivere, Reishi, le industrie in cui lavoro praticamente da sempre, cinema, televisione, teatro, editoria, sono state più o meno dominate da uomini bianchi usciti da Oxford o Cambridge, e in gran parte è ancora così. Questi uomini e i loro lacchè sono stati beneficiari di una discriminazione positiva, a dir poco, per secoli. Il mondo è sempre stato nelle loro mani e ora credono di possederlo. Poi racconta come invece persone provenienti da altri mondi, altri ambienti sociali, da altre classi abbiano riuscito una serie di nomi, da Stephen Queen, Adam Smith, Daniel Hirst, Alexander McQueen, abbiano invece cambiato questo mondo. Però la preoccupazione che questo manipolo, diciamo, di uomini bianchi riescono a tenere il potere è sempre molto forte. C'è un finale che vi leggo, sono 5 righe. Nessuno sa come sarebbe una cultura più democratica e inclusiva, ed è stupido supporre che sarebbe peggiore di quella che abbiamo già. Il tentativo dei reazionari di zittire la gente è indice sia di paura sia di stupidità, ma è troppo tardi, sentirete la nostra voce, che è poi la voce di Regi a partire dagli anni 70. Vorrei aggiungere a queste frasi una domanda sulla cosiddetta woke culture, che è molto forte negli Stati Uniti, è abbastanza forte in Gran Bretagna, è debolissima nell'Europa continentale e qui da noi. Sapere, insomma, da un lato che riflessioni ti ispira, e dall'altro se è un movimento così aggressivo che rischia di provocare una reazione, diciamo, mille virgolette, white power molto dura.
For years I was really interested in psychoanalysis. I studied Freud, and I had psychoanalysis. And one of the things that I learned, at least from it, was that you can have a fascist state of mind. I mean, you can have a fascist state of mind without necessarily being a political fascist. When I thought what I call a fascist state of mind, it's a state of mind that leaves out too much, that is too authoritarian. And one of the things that psychoanalysis teaches you is to listen to other parts of yourself. The parts of yourself that Freud called repressed, that you hear in dreams, for instance. Other parts of yourself that are foreclosed that you refuse to recognize. And so one of the things that psychoanalysis teaches you, at least, that there is much more going on in your head. You are much more interesting to yourself than you realize that you were. You can have a kind of fascist state of mind in culture, which means that there are people out there who you don't want to hear, that you don't want to listen to. And you and I we've worked in the culture industry for a long time, and what culture requires is new people, is new voices. I mean, I grew up in the 1960s, and suddenly there was a surge of proletarian energy. And suddenly you heard from the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, you heard from American culture, you heard from Jimi Hendrix, and you suddenly, with a surge of energy, of electricity from new voices coming into the culture. And you could feel that surge of electricity from new voices coming into your head as you open yourself up. I guess woke means something which is a derogatory term, but woke means something like that. It means you want to hear from other people. There are not enough people speaking in this culture. We want to make it more democratic. Let's see what other people have to say. They might be boring, they might be dull, they might be interesting. The chances are, though, because people are excluded, they're excluded because there are things we can't bear to hear. You know, when you hear about great tragedies, let's say the Empire, or you hear about the Holocaust, or slavery, for instance, there are always people that say these things never really occurred. And you understand why people would say these things don't really occur, because they're too painful to take in. It's really hard to accept the extent of human depravity. So if you're interested in social justice, which I guess you could call the woke world, it really means that you really want to hear from more people. That in the democracy in which we live, there are not enough voices. That too many people are being suppressed. And that the histories and voices, say, of women were not listened to for years. The history and voices of people of colour, or people from the Empire, were not listened to. So the idea of work is to wake people up, so that you can hear more, and you can absorb more, and you have a more complex view of yourself and your world. So if I've learned anything from psychoanalysis that I studied before, it's really that there is more going on than you want to admit. And as a journalist, you'll be aware of what is not heard, of what is left out, and what we don't want to hear and what we don't want to know about. And usually what we don't want to know about, in terms of ourselves, are often the most interesting things. Freud called that sexuality. He had a word for it. It was called sexuality. Or it was called excitement, or it was called enthusiasm. But the same thing also is the case in a society, in our world, that there are people whose voices we don't want to hear because it's painful or too interesting. So that's my feeling about what we call woke, which really means, for me, our ability to listen to other people and to allow them to speak.
Una bellissima risposta secondo me. Ora faccio una brevissima dichiarazione che potrebbe sembrare fatua, ma spero non lo sia rispetto alle domande a me che mi sono segnato. Noi italiani siamo tendenzialmente repubblicani, io fino a sono andato a scuola ai preti irlandesi, quindi l'impero britannico potete immaginare cosa pensi, però siamo rimasti tutti stupiti dal cordoglio universale, non il sottoscritto, dal cordoglio enorme dei britannici della morte della regina, ma anche dei paesi ex-colonizzati. E lui ha lasciato un'intervista secondo me interessantissima sulla monarchia e sul futuro della monarchia, che se hai voglia potresti sintetizzare per le persone che ci stanno ascoltando. Il mistero della monarchia.
I thought the Queen was quite an interesting woman. I thought she was interesting because she had no choice. She became queen when she was very young. Now, she didn't have any choice in that. She didn't apply for the job or fill in her CV. They just made her the queen. It's like, you or a random person. And I found that completely, don't you think that's an amazing and bizarre thing? If somebody said to you, now you're the king of Italy. Actually, I think you'd probably make a good king of Italy, actually. So the Queen did this extraordinary thing. She was flung into this position without any choice, but somehow she made a virtue, as we say in English, of necessity. She managed to choose it, and she played that role very, very well. She never gave it up, and everybody in the UK respected her for the idiocy of being put into a position of one day somebody telling you you're the queen. Not only are you the queen, you're the queen of this empire as well. An extraordinary, strange thing. But I think now, people have a lot of respect for her ability to do that, to take on a role that she hasn't chosen and to choose it. But I think the rest of the royal family are not as dignified or as noble as she is, and I think there'll be far more people have much more doubt about the royal family as it is. It's well known that King Charles has taken various bribes from Saudi princes in order to give them various honours and so on, and other members of the royal family are pedophiles, for instance, which is also well known. So I don't think the public is going to be so keen on the royal family as they were, as they have been, and I think their role will change. And certainly they were going to have to work much harder to justify the amount of money they have. The Queen is one of the richest, the richest woman in the UK, and one of the richest people in the world. And there are people now in the UK who are really struggling financially. A lot of people are going to be asking questions about a sense of equality, a sense of justice, a sense of that we can get a little bit of democracy, that everybody has the opportunity to flourish and to live their lives. So I think the royal family is going to find itself in the next 5 years in far more trouble, and they will protect you by the dignity and the ability of the Queen, I think. So, but I think a lot more questions are going to be asked about the royal family. But if you're right about the funeral in the morning, the whole thing was interminable, went on and on and on. It was kind of interesting, and then it was really boring. But luckily we had Netflix.
C'è un altro dei fili rossi che percorrono le pagine di Hanif in questa raccolta di saggi è la critica severa, non so se dire del capitalismo, ma delle forme che ha assunto il capitalismo in certi passaggi della nostra storia recente, Thatcher, Reagan e il cosiddetto neoliberismo. Devo dire che Hanif anche sulla libertà usa un atteggiamento molto fermo, cioè per lui è parlato, una libertà che permette all'artista di esprimersi, di prosperare. E allora tra l'altro ci sono delle pagine, scusate inciso, sulla droga e sulla droga negli anni 70, nel periodo in cui cresceva Hanif, secondo me bellissime, in cui la droga viene letta anche come uno strumento per uscire da quel perverso meccanismo che è il produco-consumo. Ecco, la droga era una possibile via d'uscita, poi magari una via d'uscita con degli effetti perversi che lui stesso lo scrive, però era considerata una possibile via d'uscita. Arrivo al punto. La società capitalistica, la società del mercato, capisco che non siano sinonimi, insomma prendiamo come sinonimi, però permettono all'artista di essere libero, di esprimere e dire quello che vuole. Quindi mi domando se non ci sia una contraddizione fra la severità con la quale tu giudichi capitalismo e i suoi effetti, neoliberismo e i suoi effetti, e invece la difesa strema della libertà, anche dell'artista. Cioè le società non capitalistiche difficilmente danno la stessa libertà all'artista, o no?
Well, there are lots of different forms of capitalism. I think it was Walter Benjamin who said it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism. And that seems to be a very wise thing, right? And I don't think I would be proposing that we have a revolution tomorrow, that we overthrow the government and establish a Marxist state. And I'm certainly not a Marxist. One of the things about capitalism that Marx talked about was its contradictions. That eventually that it destroyed itself. Because people became so greedy, then the rest of the population would become desperate and they would want to overthrow it in order to feed themselves. And we reached the situation in the UK last week where the new Prime Minister, a very, very stupid woman, really extremely stupid, it's incredible to see, she decided that the best way to save the British economy was to give tax breaks to the very rich. And even her own party. This means that if you earn, let's say, £1 million a year, you will earn an extra £55,000 a year because of the tax breaks. And I don't know why people thought this was crazy. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't. And of course, if you earn, let's say, £25,000 a year, or the average, about £28,000 a year, that your tax improvement is tiny. And after a while, people thought this was really crazy. So I don't think people want to overturn capitalism, they just want to make it work better. And there are various gradations of capitalism, where the relation between the richest and the poorest and the ratio is not so great. Surely we could have that. It's crazy that capitalism is destroying itself by becoming so ridiculous and so greedy. And this is the point that we've reached in England. It's very interesting when now people are really, really fed up with the system that is not giving them anything. And eventually they're going to stop voting for it. I think one of the reasons we had Brexit was that people wanted better lives. I don't think they voted for Brexit because they were, some of them voted for Brexit because they were racist, many of them voted for Brexit because they were stupid. But many people voted for Brexit genuinely because they thought after Brexit they would have better lives. They don't have better lives after Brexit. Liberals have said we're not going to have a better life after Brexit. They don't have better lives. And so now we're having some kind of political rebellion. And so I hope and believe we will have some kind of political change. But it's a real effort. It's taken a long time because the media, you talk about freedom of speech and so on, but we have a very right-wing media in the UK. Obviously we have Facebook, Twitter and so on. Mostly the tone of the media in the UK is very right-wing. But I think finally the tide is beginning to turn.
Ci sono delle pagine sia nei romanzi, nei aniffi, nei racconti, sia nei suoi interventi, diciamo, di pubblicistica generale sui giovani, che personalmente mi hanno sempre molto colpito. Di nuovo, citava Roma, vedeva i giovani romani e a un certo punto, parlando non so se di Roma o dell'Italia, Anif ha detto: non vorrei mai che un mio figlio crescesse in un paese così, fosse giovane in un paese così. Allora, e questo da un lato, dall'altro si è detto un po' dei suoi romanzi, dei suoi libri, pensate a La Calum o Mio figlio il fanatico, lui ragiona molto sui giovani musulmani che finiscono intrappolati nel fanatismo. Quindi la domanda che vorrei fargli è: che cosa a tuo avviso schiaccia una giovane mente, cioè una mente in formazione, e che cosa invece l'ha fatto sperare? Lui cita sempre Londra, la Londra in cui è cresciuto. Ecco, quello era un ambiente che faceva prosperare un ragazzo, una ragazza, gli dava speranza, gli dava chance di vita. E invece altri d'Italia o di fanatismo chiudono quella testa. Cosa auspicheresti per un ragazzo o una ragazza? Che tipo di mondo abbiamo detto?
Well, I've got 3 sons, and obviously my sons have girlfriends and other friends, so I have some sense of the young generation. And I'm aware that these kids are growing up in a much freer world, actually. much easier, for instance, to be gay now, or to be a dyke, to be queer, to be transgender than it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was illegal to be homosexual in the UK at all. So in many ways, it's easier to be young now, and we've liberalised the world, and certainly far more opportunities for women now than the world when I was a kid, and also more opportunities in the UK for people of colour. But I'm also aware that my kids, they're really worried about the climate. They think that we are really blind about the climate. You know, when you know there's a catastrophe coming, and you see the tsunami coming towards you, but you still don't pack a suitcase and run away and think, I can't believe the tsunami is really coming. It's not really coming. I think young people really think that an older generation like us, we are really blind and stupid when it comes to the climate. You know, you look out the window, the sun is shining, you can't believe there's going to be a climate catastrophe. So I think young people are really worried about that, and they're worried about our ignorance. They're also worried about the possibilities of other pandemics. They're also particularly worried about the rise of fascism in Europe, as you see in Poland and Hungary, and recently here, with the disgrace that's happening also in Italy. So I can see that young people are really burdened by what they see as the world that they've inherited, I guess. I guess one of the things we had when we were kids, when I was growing up, we had a sense of hope. You know, my dad came to England and he said to me, listen, when I was a kid, he said, listen, you're really lucky to be here. This is a relatively free country and you can make your way here and you can be a writer. Foolishly, I thought I could be a writer. Foolishly, I became a writer, and I've been a writer my whole life, and I'm grateful that I had the opportunity in the UK to live this life and to be free as a writer and to make my living as a writer. But I'm really worried about the future for young people. Three things: because of the possibility of other pandemics, mostly because of the climate, and thirdly because of racism and the rise of fascism in Europe, which is closing down the opportunity for free speech and free media, and possibilities that people to explore and to live their sexuality as they wish. So I can see that being a young person today is a very complicated and difficult thing, and I love young people and I want to see that they have every opportunity. And I think they will be very impressed by what they see as the way in which we left the world to them.
Salman Rushdie, c'è un capitolo dedicato a Rushdie, ovviamente precede l'accoltellamento di qualche giorno fa, che mi ha colpito molto, perché se c'è una caratteristica secondo me di grande qualità che ha influisce e ti sbatte in faccia anche delle verità che molti di noi non sono abituati ad ascoltare. Noi abbiamo avuto per secoli qui in Italia, paese cattolico, come sapete, è stato della Chiesa che sta a Roma, sta un po' più grande prima, il reato di blasfemia, e che abbiamo in qualche modo quasi assorbito. Quando Rushdie ha scritto i versetti satanici, poi c'è stata la fatwa, molti hanno detto, sia uomini di religione, diciamo così, sia anche laici in Italia, non bisogna ferire la religione altrui, il pensiero altrui. E Hanif, qui non so se lo ritrovo, a un certo punto dice, questo è il tipico atteggiamento del paternalismo bianco. Quelli sono troppo ignoranti, poco alfabetizzati, troppo rozzi per avere gli stessi diritti di noi bianchi, benestanti e stupidi. È una materia veramente difficile da mangiare.
No, I don't find it. I mean, what's difficult about it? Why is religion difficult?
Maybe
Religion is an institution that is incredibly powerful, incredibly controlling. It's got nothing to do with preserving the helpful feelings of people who might be hurt if you say that something about Jesus or Muhammad or whatever. This is ridiculous. This is a really powerful institution. And the idea that people would make jokes about it, that people would ask questions about it, that people wanted to be constructive, we want to speak about this. I mean, when I grew up, the priests and the mullahs in Islam and so on, they were all powerful, and you could never speak them, they walk by. Now people are far more never insult a Muslim or a Catholic or any individual. What we're talking about are institutions. People are free to wear a crucifix or wear a hijab or whatever. That's their freedom. They can do whatever they like. But these are really powerful institutions that are very rich and they have huge control over people's lives. And so it's really important to be blasphemous. Blasphemous is one of the greatest forms of self-expression that there possibly is. If you're able to ask questions, to make jokes, to stand up to these authorities, and to speak to them as equals, because we've been controlled by these authorities. I mean, horrible what happened to someone recently, earlier this year, is unbearable to think of. What kind of religion would stimulate a young man to attack a 75-year-old unarmed writer sitting on the stage? What kind of religion would ever make you want to do that? So there is fascist religion, just as there is fascist politics, and one of the things that fascism hates is the big question.
And you should totally support Sharia law, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? It was horrible that these defiant and important French journalists.
No, it's awful. In Italy, for example, we say, let's avoid to promote them.
Well, interestingly enough, I had this argument with Salman Rushdie himself, because I remember saying to him, and he obviously, like me, supported the Charlie Hebdo journalists. I said to him that your book is very, very sophisticated. You're not just saying religion is shit and these people are fascists. It's a very sophisticated deconstruction of Islam. Coming from a Muslim background, I didn't understand most of it myself, and I still don't, so it's very difficult. The Charlie Hebdo publications are much more vulgar and much ruder, but still, being rude is really important. And those governments and those authorities, the Vatican itself is very, very rude. Imagine, the Vatican is 99.9% gay. Everybody knows that it's the queerest institution in the world. And it's hypocritical. It would be a great pleasure to point that out. And this is the point of writers, journalists, provocateurs, or whoever we are. We speak the truth to power, and so far as we can, and that is our freedom, and that is our dignity.
Abbiamo 10 minuti se avete a couple of questions from the panel. Yes. E forse ti arriverà il microfono.
Grazie. Good evening. My name is Diana Gianquitto, and I write on a contemporary art magazine. First of all, I want to thank you because your books showed me that life can be savory even when tough, and it helped me. I have 2 questions for you. The first one, you also worked a lot for theater, movies. When do you transfer your style in visual, in image? What does image give you more, and what does it give you less to your personal satisfaction in expressing yourself? And the second question is, do you have any artists that you like and that you feel that influenced your work both in books or in screenplays, theaters? Thank you.
Well, the second question about artists, I guess I grew up in I think of the great artists as being the great cinema directors of the post-war period, actually. I remember seeing the films of Bergman, or the films of Visconti, or the films of Truffaut or Godard. And I realized that you could convey so much truth and information just visually. So I guess if we were talking about the arts, I realized that, and that as a writer, I could write a scene and write a story that would then be translated by the director and by the actors into a scene of truth. But that I was just making the opportunity for them. So there is a scene in My Beautiful Laundrette where the two protagonists, the boy played by Daniel Day-Lewis and the other boy, when they kiss outside the laundrette. And when you write the scene, you just write, they kiss outside the laundrette. That's my work for today. I did a good job that day. But of course you realise that this will be translated into what you call, I guess, art. This is a visual scene. And that when you see this in the film, that it's suddenly quite shocking because you didn't know at the moment they were homosexual. So growing up after the war and seeing those films, I began to realise the impact of visual culture. Mostly, I guess, in the cinema, rather than, let's say, looking at a picture like Picasso or art or something like that. So I realised that I, as an artist, as a writer, that I could use directors and actors and the vocabulary of the cinema to create a spectacle for an audience. So, although I'm a writer and I mostly read and write, I also have a bit, some sense of a visual imagination. So if I'm writing a movie, I'll see. I'll have an idea of what's actually the director of the actor will be doing with the scene. And so then I'll just write a simple thing with a bit of dialogue. I know that the whole scene is big, so I do have some visual sense. The first part of your question, I'm completely forgotten. Do you want to say? Oh, that's okay. Well, I love a lot of post-war American art, and I love that period of the 1950s and 1960s. I like John Cage, I like Rauschenberg, I like Jasper Johns, I love Frank O'Hara, I love the New York artists who often collaborated in terms of dance, in terms of the visual arts, in terms of the theatre, and in terms of poetry. It's incredible that all those artists from that time, they all knew each other, they drank together, they slept together, and they worked together. So you have a dancer like Merce Cunningham working with a composer like John Cage, and somebody like Frank O'Hara, a wonderful American New York poet, who will be working with them as well. So I love that period of collaboration in New York, and also the sense that that city allowed those artists to live together at that time and to work together. But somebody else has a question? I mean, I'm very interested in collaboration. I really like collaboration. I hate collaboration and I like collaboration. I mean, as a writer, I work in the theatre, I work with directors, I work with actors. Last week in London, I was working on at the National Theatre on the stage version of my novel, Suburbia. And there were actors, two actors, who were playing their parents, you know. And I looked at them and I thought, my parents weren't like that, they didn't look like that, they weren't that size, they're very small and blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, well, this is collaboration. You know, they have to play my parents, and I have to allow them to play my parents while they don't resemble my parents in any shape or form. And if I'm here, I've got to collaborate with everybody. And I've got to allow them to be the artists they are. So it's a real pleasure to collaborate. And after a while, it drives me crazy. You can see John Lennon's very warm talking now, and vice versa. Collaboration is something really important to me. Because I've got some really good directors, important directors, really great actors, and so on. And also musicians say like David Bowie, because it's huge pressure to work with somebody else. I have to say, it's much more interesting to work with somebody than just to be friends with them. You know, when you're friends with them, you have dinner, you have a nice chat, and you go separate. When you're with somebody, let's say a director or an actor or whatever, there's real tension, real conflict, you really disagree. You know, you really have to give them your ideas and their ideas and then you find out. And that's really interesting, much more exciting. I hope I made them crazy. Was there a question?
Yeah, I have a very small question. First of all, thank you very much, and I agree with the person that was preceding me, because of course your books were so insightful for me, especially speaking about displacement, which is a kind of condition that we are sharing in different ways, in different moments, for different reasons. And so coming back to the matter of multiculturalism or monolithism, as I like to define it nowadays, since my beautiful Annette, my question is, what did you see that has changed in the course of your writing and in the course of your life? What did you see as the main changes from my beautiful Annette to nowadays?
I think the world opening up. There are far more in Europe than in the US, of course. Far more artists, dancers, writers, filmmakers, and so on, of colour. And that's really interesting. I really want to see something new. I really want to hear from somebody I haven't seen before. And television has been one of the main places where you can really see. Most television is just rubbish, but occasionally, now and again, you see it and hear from people that are doing some really original and interesting work. What you want are people to tell you about your world. They tell you about your world from a different angle. That they suddenly see something from over there, from up there, around there, from a different angle that you didn't see before, and you suddenly think, yes. People said to me when they saw my beautiful home, they said, oh, that's what London's like. Someone said to me when the film came out, it's the first time for years I've seen London as a really, that's what London's like. I can't do that anymore, but other people can do that for me, and that's what I want to hear, that's what I want to see. When I was talking earlier on about psychoanalysis, and psychoanalysis is a kind of freedom from fascism, an increasing democracy. We hear more, we learn more, we hear from other people, we can tolerate, we can bear hearing from other